to look a little stressed out as we're getting towards time for me to rein it back in or something.
All right, the stream has started. Now we're going to see who accepts the stream. Twitch has accepted the stream. YouTube has accepted the stream. Facebook has accepted the stream. Is there any other pre-show stuff you want me to do before we officially start the timer?
No, I think we're good. I think if everyone feels set. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so we'll be on as soon as the thing reaches 0. Thanks.
Okay, here we go.
Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being produced at Think Twice Radio in the home of the future, also the home of our friend and producer, Richard Wicca. Thanks so much, Richard. And we also thank our dear friends at WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative radio station, coming out of Buff State University now. So we're grateful to them. And when I think of gratitude, I also think of our friends, both our indigenous friends, on whose land we're all of us, some indigenous people's lands that we're on right now. Certainly here in Western New York, we're on the Haudenosaunee land. And so we think of our indigenous friends and also formerly enslaved people who, despite all of the hardships and heartache and even attempted genocide or, just extreme oppression that people have suffered, they are still filled with gratitude and always remembering to be grateful for Mother Earth, to be grateful for the plants and animals and all the beauty around us and the Creator and the creation and all the love that animates it all. So then they might say Ashe, or here in Western New York, the Haudenosaunee say Nyahweh, and then people say Nyo. So I'll say Nyahweh, and if you could say Nyo. So Nyo. Thank you. So thank you all for coming. So we have a very very important and really upsetting topic today, which is about really the genocidal attacks on Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories, and all the chaos in the Middle East. So we have 3 wonderful guests here to talk about it. And I'll go round as the Haudenosaunee do, counterclockwise from the way I'm seeing people on my screen. We have Margaret Engel with us here. Margaret, hi, Margaret.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here tonight.
It's great to have you here. So Margaret, I've known Margaret for years because she works with Peace Action New York State. She is the student campus and campaign organizer for Peace Action New York State, doing all kinds of work with the student groups that we have throughout New York State and just with Peace Action New York State generally, and the many campaigns going on. So thank you for coming, Margaret. And
thank you for having me.
Oh, please, no, we're glad. And I'm glad to have you meet Rob Jareski, if you didn't know Rob already, because you both do there's a lot of overlap there. Rob is, as an attorney who is very busy on lots of fronts, but the one we're talking about right now, most particularly, is as volunteer coordinator of Code Pink's World Court campaign and all kinds of work you've been doing with that. Rob, welcome.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks a lot.
Friend of the show, right? That's what we said. Friend of the show. Yeah, I think by 3 times, you've been on at least 3 times. This might.
Yep, I get that title.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And thank you for bringing your friend and our new friend, Alec Schachner. Am I saying it right?
Hello.
Schachner?
Yes, that's right. Schachner.
Yes, Schachner. So thank you so much, Alec, for coming. I know you're Jewish and a Jewish voice for peace. With three of us in this Zoom room are, um, and also certainly a dedicated peace activist and dad, and just we're just grateful that you could come. So thank you, Alec.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. And I'll introduce myself, which I sometimes forget to do. I'm Victoria Ross, Vicky Ross, or I do remind people that I've reclaimed my teenage nickname of Victory because it gives me an excuse to mention that the real victory, everybody wins. And that if we had a real victory in the Middle East, it would not be anything like what's going on there right now because everybody is paying. Everybody is paying except for the arms manufacturers. But anyway, so we won't get, I'm
Yep.
traveling down that road, but we'll do that in a minute. So first, what we like to do when we start off, besides, respecting enslaved and indigenous peoples and opening up like that, to also open with something about what values do we think of when we think about our topic. So today's topic being what's going on in the Middle East, what's being the war crimes, et cetera, that are being perpetrated by Israel, and not exclude. I mean, certainly there have been a lot of war crimes all around, and the United States being very much one. War, we've done our own war crimes aplenty. But anyway, when we think about what's going on in the Middle East, what are the values that we want to remind people of and keep in mind most firmly? So Margaret, if you think of a value or two that you think is important in this topic.
Yeah, something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is just the value of trust. Definitely in my work with students, I've had lots of conversations about how they're struggling and members of their chapter of Peace Action are struggling, and just general university students are struggling to have any trust in their institutions when it comes to their administration or just media or even their family institutions or religious institutions, because there's so much misinformation out there, and some of it you feel like you can trust and others you aren't sure, and so there's so much confusion, and I think that's really hard to get the conversation going with people who aren't as familiar with the topic.
I'm so glad you said that. As a social worker, I can't help mentioning that trust is the first thing that a baby is navigating. Is the world a place that I can trust and feel safe in or not? So that is the first, and it's elemental to any of our relationships. So thank you for bringing that up. Rob, what do you think of? What values are you thinking
Well,
of?
the value that I think is very important is accountability, taking responsibility or having responsibility be assigned to the parties that are committing these atrocities that we are all witnessing and have witnessed for months and many of us for years, seeing what the occupation means and how it impacts people's lives, and then these assaults on the civilian population. So I think accountability is a really important value to focus on because we keep, like Margaret was mentioning, there's a lot of confusion, or I would call gaslighting, actually, about what is happening, what are we experiencing, and I think really continuing to focus on the declared intentions of the Israeli government and high officials of their government, and what they're actually doing, their actions, and holding them responsible for that is to cut through that gaslighting and stay focused on the idea that we have that responsibility to hold people responsible, states responsible also for their atrocities.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, that is so critical, is accountability, and truth telling. So to keep people accountable, I love that you mentioned about gaslighting, because that is very, very big on what's going on now in a lot of arenas. But this is a big one of them. And Alec, what's something that you think of for a value in relation to
Um,
what's going on?
I think that we could all benefit from practicing empathy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when and if you're able to really feel what people are feeling on the other side of or from a different perspective, it becomes very difficult to practice the level of dehumanization that we're seeing. Um, And I think there's a lot of sort of almost, I don't know, something like false empathy, where you see that one side seems to claim they know what the other side thinks, or the hidden intentions. Um, uh, I mean, in the sense of Zionists kind of always claiming that that there's this. Um, desire to erase desire for erasure when it doesn't seem to be there. um but again, when you can just really see other people as human, and feel where they're coming from, even from a perspective of hostage negotiations, there's a term, tactical empathy, because when you're able to just acknowledge the narrative of the other side in the most basic way, it really diffuses the situation. So I just think, to grant people the power to define their own identity, and to practice empathy on the level of human compassion, and just on all levels would really help.
So key, so important. You're so right that empathy is critical to what's going on, and if true empathy and compassion was being practiced, we would not be in this position. But back to, it reminds me of the ones I usually think of are, I'm always thinking about what Dr. King said, Reverend Dr. King said, that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. And so truth and love I think of, but actually, because of just the way that the values that you all mentioned, it makes me think of something that Cornell West once said, that if people really had the moral integrity and the universal solidarity, then we get where we need to go. So I think all of those things, they really are very much encompassed in the values that each one of you said. So trust is in there, in the truth telling, and certainly compassion is part of. I mean, with love, people, we need both of those things to be going on, and that includes communicating. So that's what we're doing here. So just grateful to have you all here for this. I want to say I did something. I was in part, I was listening to Democracy Now before I got on this for this Zoom, and I want to say it really is a downer. It mostly always is, or very often is. Um, so there's a lot going on, and it's not limited, of course, to just the issue that we're talking about, but keeping it on that one. I mean, the place that we're at with with um, the 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 devastation, the bombing, the deprivation is just incredible. So maybe if we go around the room with just some little a fact or two that has come to your attention about what's going on right now, that you'd like to share, to bringing people up to speed about what's going on there. So again, we'll just keep that talking circle format where we'll just go around the circle. So Margaret.
Yeah.
Just
Something
in,
that I've noticed
mm,
in the past couple of weeks has been, in going back to Rob's point about gaslighting, I've seen so many articles trying to debunk the death count, and all of these like kind of pseudo studies coming out saying that the Ministry of Health is either lying, fudging their numbers, are just Hamas operatives, and giving these kind of pseudo facts saying that this number of like 46,000 plus is wrong, and it's not the big crisis that certain institutions are making it out to be. And mainstream media has been reporting that in some cases. And when you look at the links that they give for the study and you actually read what's going on in the study, then like it's all not like actual facts, and it's just ridiculous. But I think that a lot of people who either don't have the time or don't have the motivation to click on that link and look are just kind of taking it at face value, which is really dangerous and contributes to this culture of gaslighting. And I know that some are saying that the death count should be like well over 100,000 at this point. And so that kind of goes back to what I'm saying about this confusion in the media. And I've been thinking about that a lot because I think this current wave of just general Islamophobia across the world, but especially most recently in the UK, is part of that, is part of the gaslighting. So that's something that's been on my mind.
thank you. That is very big. Rob, I know you have lots to add.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of, I understand that Ireland just joined the case,
Yes, wonderful.
South Africa's case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's good. There's also a big push in Ireland to not wait for the European Union to decide by consensus to implement an economic embargo or economic sanctions against Israel, but to do it unilaterally. And there's, I think, Ireland just moving from that, or judging by what we know about Ireland's history, and also the Khalidi article or interview that you sent us. Rashid Khalidi was interviewed. He's writing a book about Ireland, and he
Mm-hmm.
feels that there's an obvious connection, and the Irish people really feel it also between what's happening um, to the Palestinians and what happened to them for hundreds and hundreds of years. This colonial project. There are a lot of people who want the government there to do more, and it just makes me think about how I mean that even our even our allies, even South Africa, that has filed this application that has gotten a lot of people talking and move and focusing on their excellent application, which outlines the intent, the genocidal intent that is an integral part of some violations of the genocide convention. I mean, others don't need genocidal intent, like incitement. You can incite people without intending a genocide, but you would still be violating the genocide convention. But they outlined, really important elements in their application. But even South Africa is selling coal to Israel, right? Is still delivering coal, whereas Colombia, which is not a very diverse economy, it depends more on its exports, its resource exports. They stopped delivering coal to Israel, and then Ireland too. They're still trading with Israel, and there are flights that are delivering military equipment and providing intelligence, U.S. Assets, military assets that are flying through Irish territory.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, it's great that there is that. There's the Ireland Declaration of Intervention they've filed alongside South Africa. It's important that we all stand and support South Africa, but I don't want to make more of it than it is. It's very important, but all of these countries need to do more given what is happening and what, yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Rob, for the work that you're doing that I find truly, well, vital and so important, trying to work through the UN and trying to draw attention to really the legal requirements under the law after looking at what the world court decisions have been, what's going on in those court cases, like the one you said you're talking about that South Africa brought. That would you say that's where it's a, how would you summarize that case for people that Israel is involved in genocide?
So it's challenging Israel for violating its obligations under the Genocide Convention.
Right.
The application's pretty concise. It's 84 pages, and they make the case that they had to make in order to get the World Court to issue provisional measures that are like protective steps to protect rights that are belonging to the Palestinians at risk because of these alleged violations. So there are these violations that involve targeting the population for, destruction, for erasure. There are these allegations that are substantiated, and these provisional measures, which the Israeli judge in at least three of them voted in support of. The Israeli and the Israel gets to appoint a judge, and so does South Africa, and then there are 15 other judges on the panel. And the Israeli judge, who is the head of the Supreme Court in Israel, also supported these provisional measures, not just in the first round, but in subsequent rounds, indicating that at least he thought that earlier measures were not being abided by and that additional measures were necessary.
Right. Well, thank you. Yes. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and that's being done on all of those things. But it's good to see Ireland stepping up. But as you point out, there's a lot there's so much more that needs to be done. What would you say, Alec, has really gotten your attention about any of the different measures or events that have happened recently in the Middle East?
Yeah, well, in this past week, on Monday, yes, this Sunday, the Palestinian-led organization Within Our Lifetime, he was calling for healthcare workers at the New York University Tisch Hospital to walk out and to make a statement in support of Dr. Abu Safia being released, and make a statement against the assault against the Kamal Adwan Hospital. And I was just struck by people being totally unaware that this was even happening. I mean, the assault on the Kamal Adwan Hospital was ongoing for weeks, and they were begging for help. You just watching it day after day, and there seem to be people that are just totally unaware of it. It is unbelievable how the mainstream media just isn't reporting on it at all. So that the day of the protest, there could be people, who are like, why are they protesting against a hospital that are not even aware of this context at all? I mean, on the first hand, they don't seem to be aware how complicit NYU is as an institution, declaring their on for sitting in the library, having a study in and arresting their faculty in the streets in front of the university recently. I don't understand how it's even a question. Why would they be protesting outside a hospital? And it's amazing how the media can swing it as them protesting sort of against a hospital when they're simply calling for solidarity, like for healthcare workers to stand in solidarity with healthcare workers everywhere around the world. So, to watch that happen, especially after, the death of Dr. Al-Bursh, allegedly, raped to death. But regardless of the, he was murdered. He was killed, and now Dr. Abu Safia has gone missing, and his mother just had a heart attack. And it's just so sad to be sitting watching this, like, just painfully drag on day by day, and then to also have people just be totally oblivious. It's unbelievable. Um, yeah.
I have to apologize in a way because when I'm asking you, I know even what's going through my head about all the things that each of you have been saying is connected to so much else about it, like the $8 billion more in arms that Biden just initiated. It is unthinkable. That is ridiculous. That is illegal under our own laws. What to speak of international law? Completely illegal, breaking 6 laws, and just unthinkable, unthinkable. Um, I want to mention. I know, Alec, that what you've been doing, one of the things that I've been doing, that is being in the synagogue, reminding people, because here's the other thing about the gaslighting. Who's getting gaslit? It's, first of all, the American public. It makes me think of our dear, also friend of this show, dear friend and wonderful, just icon of truth telling. He got the Stellar Media Award from the Western New York Peace Center, Craig McIver. And when he accepted that award, he said, when these things are going on, truth telling is uh, supposedly, or at least is taken as a crime, is accused of being a crime. And that what happens in the media, what we've seen in some of the conversations I'm in, the amount of media misrepresenting things, gaslighting, changing it. And I wanted to say, and as far as the Jewish people are, many of them, highly gaslit. They have such a different idea of what's going on. They don't understand. They say, "Oh no, you don't understand. It's not like that," because that's what their sources are telling them something completely different. So there's a lot of pieces around all of this. So I think if we, and they're so upsetting. It's so distressing, the number of journalists that have been killed, the medical people, medical workers, doctors, as you're saying, all of the hospitals and schools have. It's just beyond. It's just beyond. So
Gaslighting of Jews and the Jewish
yes,
community. I think that's a really good point. I mean, when we're outside the UN, the U.S. mission, and like people walk by and they were like, "What about the hostages?" And we're like, "Yeah, we'd like the hostages
yeah,
freed as well." And this is the way, a ceasefire. And you start to talk to them, and I always wonder, like, what are your sources of information? I mean, the Israeli government has barred international media from Gaza. All right. So all of your
right,
media is coming from your military, and it's not on the ground, and it's reinterpreting the experiences that we're getting directly from the people who have been killed. Like you just said, Palestinian journalists, 180 or more. I think it's now 200, maybe, actually 206. It's,
right,
I mean, so the most moral army in the world does not want international observers. Like, there's such like, a palpable contradiction of the mindset that is claiming that we don't know. You don't know what's going on because Hamas is stealing the food, or well, actually, the Hamas police officers were keeping rioters and looters away from food, and they were targeted. The Israeli military is targeting the civil forces, police forces that are necessary for orderly, like, distribution of humanitarian aid, and they're doing it on purpose. They're being targeted on purpose because the Israeli government wants a disaster. They want a humanitarian disaster. So
right. right?
Yeah, it's so good. You both you guys. I mean, you didn't really detail, Vicky. You are in the choir of your synagogue, and you've gone in and repeatedly mentioned the existence of Palestinians and their experience, and it's. I think you said recently that the rabbi thanked you publicly for
He
having
did.
done
So,
that.
hmm
Yeah.
so that makes me feel hopeful. But people, what that a lot of times people do say, oh, you have to go. You'll see, it's not like you think it is. It isn't apartheid. No, no, no. I've been there. I've seen it. It's not like that. But I also, it makes me think of when they say, the first casualty of war is truth, right? So
Mm.
this is what we see, and it also it makes me think of I don't know if any of you saw the movie Zone of Interest. Zone of Interest. So where it takes place outside Auschwitz, and the family of the commandant in Auschwitz, they're just living their lives. They're getting some of the goods from the Jews that have been taken into Auschwitz, the mink coats and the whatever they got. And meanwhile, you hear people screaming and other things going on, but they're just gardening and doing what they do and just blocking it out. Like, la 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 la, I can't hear you. But
Yeah.
so it's about people, that truth and love. And trauma is a huge factor in here. So it's not that people, it's trauma is acting in there, and everybody in this situation is traumatized, no question. And then
Yeah.
oh, and then let me just mention just one more thing before we go around again. The Merchants of Death Tribunal that'll be doing their the only people who are benefiting really, which is the companies, the arms manufacturers and their shareholders are they are the only beneficiaries of all of this. And so the Merchants of Death War Crimes Tribunal is going to have a press conference on the 15th it'll be 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that'll be posted different places. People can just Google Merchants of Death, and they'll find it. So what I'd like to do is go around, and so for each of you to talk a little bit about what you've seen, and what you're working on that's related to moving the needle or making changes or even drastic changes, but what some of the efforts are. So we'll start with you again, Margaret, and especially including the student groups, which have been so beaten up upon by their own complicit administrations.
Yeah, definitely it's been a crazy 13 months, is it? Or more than that.
Right. Well, 400,
Many months.
400, maybe 460 days by now, 456 days, something like that.
Yeah. And the administrative crackdown from different universities has been just such a wild thing to see, especially because I don't know. I think I can still call myself like a youth person
Yes.
in the peace
Oh.
movement. Maybe I'm eclipsing on that, but I've been working with these student chapters since 2021. And so seeing the juxtaposition of what organizing was like before October 7th and now is just so unbelievable. We had a lot of students who were involved in encampments through either direct action or supportive roles. And I know many students who were arrested, suspended, threatened to be expelled, threatened to not be allowed to graduate. And that is something that was so new for me in this position as the coordinator for these students. And so it was hard to be talking with them throughout the last couple of semesters and hearing about all of the obstacles that they're facing and hearing some Muslim students saying that they feel generally unsafe on campus, and just hearing about the lack of safety from students and between faculty members. And so it's taken a lot of solidarity within the student groups for them to like find the strength and motivation and resources to keep going. But I don't know. I would say definitely since the encampments, which was the spring of 2024, a lot of students have kind of backed off from that because of how crazy and drastic the crackdowns were. And so it's been less direct action, although I know some students want to continue doing that. And all I can do really as the coordinator is just provide the resources that I can, and make sure that they know that they have support and that they're not alone in this. But it can be a challenging role for sure.
Oh, for sure. And it's been, I know here in Buffalo, we had a just insane amount of police, 5 different forces that came after our students when they agreed to take down their encampment, and they had taken it down, and then they were just it was evening prayers, so they wanted to just do their evening prayer there. And then 4 minutes after the prayer time had ended, the police went into chasing people down, tearing off somebody's hijab. I mean, just terrorizing the students who were peaceful and cooperative. So it was just mind blowing. But now I want to ask you, just I heard that also there's been some fundraising as some kind of a way. Is that somehow how they've tried to sort of shift into a mode that they won't get so penalized for or unfairly targeted?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the students refocused their actions on fundraising this past semester.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still tallying up the total, but it's somewhere between $2,500 to $3,000 across the 12 student chapters, raising money for the Palestine Children's Relief Group, raising money for an organization based in Lebanon to help with people who are suffering from wounds and were refugees. And they were doing this through a myriad of ways. There were some bake sales. In the spring semester, there was a huge like peace gala with music and art and dance at one chapter. And then also another chapter this past fall had a whole Palestinian art exchange and
Wow.
auction off these beautiful pieces and kafiyas and just all of these really great stuff to kind of help spread awareness, but keep the rest of the student body engaged, even if they're not really familiar with it. So there are ways to do this kind of action without being fully on the ground in an encampment and possibly facing arrest and suspension.
Right. Right. Well, thank God. Thank God. Most, I think, well, anyway, it's been a high price for some people, but, it's that discernment of just sort of making a decision, tactical decisions about what you can afford to do and what you can't. So thank you for all the support you're giving them, Margaret. So, Rob, what would you tell people about some of the work
Sure.
that you're doing?
I'd also like to know, like how we can support Margaret's like network, if there's like a way we could before the end of the show.
Oh,
But
well,
um,
go ahead, Margaret, if you want to answer that.
I'm sorry, my audio cut out at the last second. What
oh,
was
I was
that
just
question?
wondering how we could support your network and these efforts. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. We're right now trying to do more outreach and get more student campuses on the ground and active. That always takes some more funding. So if anyone is feeling super generous, then I encourage you to donate to the Peace Action Fund of New York State. And just in general, kind of boosting on social media the topics that students are focusing as like a representative of any kind of organization, or just yourself if you want to advocate for the work that students are doing, even if it goes against university code or what the dean of the school is saying in an email. It's still so important that students know that they have people supporting them.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I wanted you two to meet each other, because, there are student groups in New York City that are just handy. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're and in Western New York too. We have the Niagara University Peace Action Group, and Canisius University Peace Action Group is restarting, and we'll look to get some more restarting if we can. Buff State people who are listening, Buff State could be one. That's a job for people, right?
Yeah.
So check it out on Peace Action New York State campus, or Peace Action Fund, but go to PANYS, PANYS.org.
Yeah,
So,
the students were so inspiring and really gave like all these other arms of the movement like a lot of hope and energy. So that I do think it's so important to support them in their principled positions that they were taking. Um, but as far as what we're doing in New York, so in the next few days we're having an art pop up in Astoria at the King of Falafel, which is at 3015 Broadway, from 3 to 6 p.m. on the 11th of January. It's a pop-up for liberation. It's a similar kind of art cultural outreach and organizing to the community, to engage the community and have them join Code Pink's efforts in New York City. Code Pink's World Court campaign is going to be reaching out to the new members of the Security Council, the new temporary members, Panama, Pakistan, Somalia, Greece, and Denmark. And so those are really, many of those are very important countries that there's much more they can do. Maersk is based in Denmark. It's a Danish company. It's a target of worldwide campaign to have them stop delivering military aid to Israel. Greece also has been implicated as a transit point for military aid for fuel. And we reach out to these missions of these countries and meet with their diplomats and let them know that there are Americans, and we are the majority, despite being gaslit. We have to remember we are the majority. We have the principles and the morality on our side, and we need to keep fighting because it's continuing. So we meet with these diplomats and we show them the reality in America, which is that there are many people who oppose what Israel's doing, what the U.S. is doing to arm Israel, what the European Union is doing to continue trade with Israel. All of these things that we urge them to stop and to isolate Israel until it stops. The ethnic cleansing of Gaza, the erasing of the Palestinian life there. So those letters will go out. We'll ask for a meeting. We may have a meeting with a few of them. We've met with dozens of diplomats, Germany, Bolivia, Bangladesh, Iran, Russia, the Swiss we met with. We've met with Brazil, Spain, and they need to keep hearing from us. And, having students involved is very important. Having the Jewish community is really important to just, get rid of that canard that, criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. I mean, it's just
ridiculous.
It's becoming more and more like satire of a position. Yeah. And Code Pink also has an Expel the ADL from Our Schools campaign. The Anti-Defamation League is seeking to, again, weaponize anti-Semitism, the very real threat of bigotry that exists targeting Jews, but also many other peoples in our uneducated among uneducated people. But the ADL is a real weaponizer of that term to defend Israel. And so there's a campaign that Code Pink has going into school districts nationwide to get the school boards not to accept the ADL's definition of anti-Semitism. It's a very important campaign, and I hope that your listeners will join that campaign as well and join us at the King of Falafel on the 11th of January. And the Code Pink Instagram is, let me just give it to you guys. It's at codepink.nyc.
At codepink.nyc.
Yeah.
So I want to say, I mean, having been part of some small, tiny fraction of all the work that you've done and those visits, I want to say it's very interesting work and very, well, I'm going to say hope generating work. So it feels good, and so what would you say? What are the new members again? Why don't you? So anybody who's associated with any of these countries who might want to get in touch with you to help, if they could go to those missions.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. We try to create delegations, teams that have a link to the country, ancestry, language, etc. So the countries are Pakistan, Somalia, Panama, Greece, and Denmark. So if you have a connection, family, friends, some history with those countries, yeah, really do reach out to Code Pink. You can volunteer. There's an anti-genocide toolkit, and you can Google that Code Pink anti-genocide toolkit. And if you want to get involved, there's a link to get involved. Put in your information, and we'll reach out to you. That'd be great.
That would be great. That would be great. Yeah, it's very, very important work. And I love what you said about the ADL too, because that is such a ridiculous, it's just back to gaslighting people and, conflating things that aren't related, etc. So thank you for all of that. Now, what would you say, Alec, if some either ways that you're working now, and things that you're doing that, are just trying to just chip away at everything that needs to get done?
Yeah, well, there's certainly many issues that need to be addressed in New York. Everything from trying to engage with the Department of Education, with even with elementary schools in dealing with this issue, to dealing with the universities. I mean, to speak on Jewish community, I'm really shocked and disappointed how intellectually dishonest institutionalized Jewish communities have become as a whole, and like how I don't understand they seemingly just refuse to just read the reports. Why they can't? If they say Amnesty International is anti-Semitic, so they don't want to read any Amnesty International, they don't want to read Human Rights Watch, they don't want to read any of these reports. Well, now there was the Israeli professor that put together, I'm blanking on his name right now, a quite extensive report. You could look it up as the I'm blanking on that one. I'm sorry. But
right.
Of course, there's forensic architecture, which is in part run by the Israeli architect E.L. Weissman, that recently did the report on yeah, just go to forensic architecture website. And the thing that blows my mind is that nothing is presented on the opposite side, which is anything remotely legitimate to prove these arguments about human shields. They have never shown the any documentation of the command center under Al Shifa Hospital or of any of these things. They just keep on destroying hospital after hospital, university after university, and there's no call for documentation or no kind of like honest effort from that side to present any kind of documentation for their claims. So I really would encourage the Jewish community to just do better. But it is a challenge. It really is. I mean, we have had to walk away from a lot of communities. Even this week, I was trying to engage with a rabbi. We had a little bit of a back and forth, and essentially he's refusing to meet with me because I wear a keffiyeh. And I'm like, I refuse to allow you to like police what I wear in public. Like, I'm not gonna take off a keffiyeh to get a coffee with you. I'm sorry. And then like he sends me some kind of article from NPR, which is just an opinion piece. It is not serious research. And I just. It's really disappointing to see the Jewish community being so intellectually dishonest and just with no accountability, as Rob said. And I mean, I would even say I'm disappointed in the Jewish activist groups like JVP or Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, or if not now, because they seem to refuse to engage directly with Jewish community. They stay away from the synagogues. They don't seem to want to engage with either congregants or rabbis and call them out on this or have any kind of serious conversations. The conversation is just not being had. Although ultimately, of course, it's just a small piece of the puzzle. As we all know, the arms manufacturers and the lobby is really pushing this a lot more than like synagogues are. But I do think that as far as activism goes, that the student groups did an amazing job. I was at the Gaza Solidarity Encampment at Columbia like from day one, just because I'm an alum, so I had campus access. But to see what's gone on at Columbia, I mean, Columbia is a total dystopian lockdown checkpoint mode right now. Even alumni are now denied campus access. And in case anyone's wondering, the reason why there's no encampment, there's no protest going on in campus, because it's been entirely locked down and essentially banned. It's I mean, the students can have demonstrations on campus, but there is no possibility for anyone who isn't like a current student or a faculty member to really access the campus and get involved. So they closed themselves off from the community entirely. And I think that the student movement is really struggling to figure out like what to do next in the face of this just the power of the institution. I mean, Columbia has essentially, in my opinion, completely thrown away its reputation as anything. I think it's become very obvious that it's really just a real estate holding company. Like it's not a serious academic institution. I mean, they could just summarily fire Professor Mohammed Abdu because Elise Stefanik said something in this congressional hearing. It makes no sense at all. He's a very serious scholar. He's done very serious work, and he's also just a very gentle person. And I mean, it's just so absurd, really. And again, when we look at it, inside of academia, there is no debate among historians, among anthropologists, among social scientists, among political scientists. There's no legitimate debate, about the historical record or really about what's going on right now. The professors that oppose it, are all the people in the law school, in the business school, and essentially they're all like cronies of the trustees. It's the wildest stuff. I mean, Columbia University paid $400,000 and gave an apology to the student who sprayed military-grade chemical weapons on nonviolent student protesters on campus. Everybody knows this. It's just so unbelievable. I think it's really time to hold these institutions accountable. And yeah, I mean, the Jewish community, what I would say, what I say to my father, what I say to all these people, is when are you going to wake up? Here we are. This is Berlin, this is like when the Nazis were coming to power. Are you just going to sleep through this until, this becomes did we learn anything from history? I
Okay.
really don't understand. And I mean it in the sense of, the incumbent, what is the next presidency is going to look like, and the severe restrictions that are going to happen on freedom of speech. So,
Thank
um,
you. Yeah.
yeah, I think if Jews really care about anybody's safety, it's time to take another look at this. And yeah, I mean, just imagine beyond nationalist projects. I think we said
Thank
we
you.
were going to mention
Thanks.
something about. Oh, sorry.
No, well, just we're getting very low on time at this point. So,
Sure, sure.
was there what? So I think we have just barely enough time for each of you to just give like a bottom line, something, like a sentence of what you'd like to see people do to help or get more involved. So, if we can quickly go around on that, Margaret. You did say one thing, but yeah. So
Yeah, I think that the most important thing in this fight is to connect it to other critical issues. There are so many people focused on the climate crisis. Connect that to militarism and know that
right.
there's so many carbon emissions coming from militarism, and maybe that could lead to thinking about Israel, Palestine, and what's going on there. So just finding that solidarity in all of these movements is so critical in the next 4 years.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So true. Rob? Oh, are you on mute?
I jumped ahead of ourselves here because I already gave like how people can connect with the
Oh, well, you can still just remind people.
okay,
Just yeah.
the Code Pink World Court campaign, and if you Google Code Pink Genocide Accountability Toolkit, I think is what it's called, something like that, you'll find a page where you can get involved and click on that link, and we'll reach out to you once you give us your information. Follow us on Instagram in New York City at codepink.nyc.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thanks so much, Vicky. And
No,
I hope Alex shares about his idea about the designization project, the community designization project. But anyhow,
yeah.
thank you
So
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 much.
if you
Thank
can
you.
give us what you call a sound bite for the community designization project. So just
Community.
yeah, in like yeah, just the kernel, the
Well,
bottom line.
I just would like to really implore Jewish people to um, recall the fundamental tenets. Basically, we're at a turning point, and it's time to make a decision whether we will allow Judaism to become this just corrupted and inverted version of itself. Like this is you should stand up now in order to save the future of institutionalized Jewish community wherever it is, because this is not a sustainable project.
Right.
And Judaism
Thanks.
is not a nationalist project. So it's time to really get over it.
Exactly.
Read the reports.
Thank you.
And get over it. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Alec. Yeah, that's crucial. It's the bottom line. Look at the faith. What does it tell us about if you kill one person, you've killed the whole world? That's a bottom line thing for Judaism. So all this massive killing, massive and denial that's going on, it's just horrific. But I want to say what makes me hopeful is listening to any and every one of you about the things you're working on, the things that you're trying, and things can change so quickly. So I know how hard you're all working, how much and how much stress we're all under, because there's so much that needs to be done. So thank you so much for coming. We'll just keep going on, and things, we're going to get where we need to go. We will, because truth and love will have the final word in reality. So this is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace in truth and love.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Vicky.
so much. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. So that's
Thank
the
you.
wrap. Yeah, thank you. Well, that clap is when and so then when Richard goes back, that's where he stops it. So, but we're still
Oh,
on,
okay.
probably on Facebook or something.
Right, right.
Anyway,